Well, hello everyone, and welcome once again to another edition of Pray on This. I'm your host, John Pray. Before we get going, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. Remember, this is now the C11 censorship era, and some of us have already noticed changes to the algorithms within our social media. I'm one of them. So if you don't want conservative voices silenced, you don't want Justin Trudeau deciding what you get to see, then make sure that you take care of yourself. So, is there an election coming in Canada? Well, I would say that the election war drums are starting to beat, and they're starting to beat a lot louder than most of us who are not inside baseball political watchers would even know right now. However, I say this because of certain things that have happened in the last 2.5 months in Ottawa and some of the big announcements of the last few days. First, we have something starting in Ottawa tomorrow called Liberal 2023. It's the Liberal Party of Canada's annual convention. Their keynote speaker is going to be none other than failed United States presidential candidate Hillary Rodham Clinton, involved in a fireside chat with our Deputy Prime Minister, Krista Freeland. But that's not the big thing that says that there's an election coming. Here are the three major reasons that I think an election is coming and coming soon. First of all, the public service strike that was settled. Now, we still have 35,000 employees out on strike who work for the Canada Revenue Agency, but 120,000 have gone back to work. They were seeking a 3-year deal, but the thing about that 3-year deal was that it was for the 3 previous years. It was for this year, 2023, 2022, and 2021. What the Liberals were able to do was get a 4th year added to the contract so that the civil servants won't be looking for money until 2024. Well, that tells me that that's kicking the can of labor disputes down the road so that they are not an election issue. The Liberals will want to have an election out of the way before they're going to have to deal with the civil servants again. I would suspect that when they finally get the Canada Revenue Agency strike settled, that it too will be a 4-year deal. The second reason that I say the war drums are beating is the fact that if you go on Twitter and other social media platforms, the Liberal cabinet ministers are all over them, extolling the virtues of the Liberal Party of Canada, Budget 2023, and the fact that Marco Mendicino has brought Bill C-21, the gun control bill, back from the dead. Liberals love to campaign on heartstring issues like gun control. They love to use it as a wedge issue. And if they bring forward something now, but don't get it passed before we go to the polls, which, if we go in the fall, it will be almost impossible for them to pass any sort of gun legislation. They'll try to use it as a wedge issue and beat the Conservatives over the head with it that they don't care about Canadian safety. Pretty laughable when we consider just how lax their bail issues are. But we also saw moves there with also Marco Mendicino and David Lametti, the Attorney General and Justice Minister, standing with all the Attorney Generals of the provinces, saying that, oh yes, we're going to look at doing bail reform. But if you notice, they didn't do anything right away. They're kicking that one down the can. They're kicking that can down the road as well. That's so they don't have to do anything about it, just talk about it, but they're trying to diffuse that as an election issue that they can get beat over the head with it. But the final and biggest one is the shuffle of the PMO. The PMO, or the Prime Minister's Office, is the most powerful office in this country. There's a lot of people who don't want to believe that they think the power lies with the elected officials. But the simple fact of the matter is that the people who advise our elected officials have an awful lot to do with our Canadian democracy and our life. They have an awful lot to do with what legislation gets put forward, and they actually set the government agenda. Now, the PMO has made some serious moves starting back in February. One of the big things they did back in February is they started moving around chiefs of staff. Now, chiefs of staff, especially for cabinet ministers, are hired on what's called a dual hiring. In other words, the minister that they're going to work for has to like the person and has to be able to work with them. However, it's also a fact that the PMO wants to have their fingers on that person. They want to be able to control that person. So we'll talk about Samantha Kalil. She used to be the director of issues management for the Prime Minister's office. She was a trusted crisis firefighter, and she moved over to public safety to become Marco Mendicino's chief of staff. Marco Mendicino was just coming off getting flamed over Bill C-21. He's been caught lying to Parliament. It's trying to revive a senior cabinet minister's career because losing him and losing his riding could be devastating to the Trudeau Liberal government. Also, Tara Saluski, who is leaving Employment Minister Quattro's office to take over Anita Anand's chief of staff at Defense. And Mike Macca is also to be rumored in the mix. Now, this hasn't happened yet, but Macca currently works for beleaguered Transportation Minister Omar Al-Gabra. And there's a lot that say that Olga Radchenko is on her way out over an immigration, and that Sean Fraser, who also has been running a portfolio that's been totally mismanaged by the government, that he's getting a new chief of staff as well. So if you take a look, you've got chiefs of staff being brought in who are known firefighters. They deal with crisis issues, and they are there to try and rebuild the reputation of a lot of beleaguered Liberal cabinet ministers. There's two ways to deal with this. A, you move those cabinet ministers out of cabinet and move other people in. However, at 8 years old, this government is getting kind of thin on the backbench in terms of talent. Do we really want to see a Mark Gerritsen as an actual cabinet minister? Probably not. So it's try and move in a known firefighter to try and redeem the reputation and the electability of the current minister so that even if they do lose government, it's not a bloodbath. Finally, Cameron Ahmad. Cameron Ahmad has been with Justin Trudeau since before he was elected Prime Minister. He's been with him since he ran for the Liberal Party leadership all the way back in 2013, holding senior positions within the Trudeau administration, both before in his office as leader of the Liberal Party and held several positions, but the longest one was his basically press secretary, which he's held since 2019. Ahmad is leaving the Prime Minister's office to go to work for the Liberal Party of Canada to help set up their next election. So you have senior staffers with a lot of political experience in the PMO, no longer working in the PMO, but going back to Liberal head office to start working out how they can try and hold on to power in the next federal election. Tough job, considering where the polls are at, but that's what's going on. The war drums are beating. Justin Trudeau is getting rather stale with Canadians. I don't really think the Liberal Party of Canada wants to go into an election with them as their leader. And when I say that, I'm not talking the MPs and his cult followers. I'm talking the big thinkers at LPC headquarters, for fear that the hate of Trudeau will really move across and be hate for the Liberal Party. And, they could be devastated, much like the now extinct Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. I'm not sure it's that bad, but you've got a lot of senior people moving out, new blood moving in. This is to try and give the current government new blood, new direction, new ideas. And you've got those senior staffers who do know how to run elections moving from the PMO's office and worrying about governing, and now starting to worry about how to regain power, as well as you're moving your most trusted senior staff members out of the PMO's office and into the positions of chief of staff in critical ministries, and where ministers need to have their reputations rebuilt before there's an election. It's a valiant effort by the Liberal Party of Canada. However, when we take a look at many metrics, first of all, Trudeau's popularity, period, which right now he's sitting at a 61.2% disapproval rating as Prime Minister. And as preferred Prime Minister, he's at 25%, trailing the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, who's sitting at 28%. We have a real issue for the Liberal Party of Canada to try and stay in power, which, in my opinion, their loss of power cannot come soon enough. But the Liberals, being the Liberals, are pulling out all the stops to try and save what they can. And although I don't think that this will actually save them anything, the attempt to pivot and give the government new life and give the government new direction is well underway. This usually happens 6 to 8 months before the Prime Minister himself, will go to see Governor General Mary Simon and tell her that Parliament is no longer working and it needs to be dissolved. For those of you who say, oh, we're not going to have an election till 2025, he's got a confidence and supply agreement with the NDP's Jagmeet Singh. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but during the strike, that coalition became quite strained. And Jagmeet is becoming more and more a pain in the Prime Minister's butt, trying to distance himself, which is probably the only thing he can do at this moment in time. And we just need to look at the simple fact. Minority parliaments last about 2 to 2.5 years. So coming into the fall of 2023, if the Prime Minister went to the Governor General Tuesday or Wednesday after Labor Day and asked her to dissolve Parliament and set up a 40-day election campaign, that would put us voting on the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Traditional time of the year for Canadians to actually have federal elections. Kind of cute, but also about the time that if Justin had been reelected with a majority in 2019, we would be going to the polls. I think it's already set in stone. Every party's out there trying to raise money. Well, you can see that by the Liberal Party convention this weekend. The price of the tickets are astronomical. It's an effort to try and raise money. I don't think that when we take a look at the amount of money raised by the three main parties from the beginning of the year, and we see the fact that the Conservative Party of Canada has raised over $5 million. The Liberals have raised under 2, and the NDP is right around 1 million. I think we know who's going to have a major war chest to fight the next election. They have a younger, very energetic leader. Yes, he may be a populist, but he has a lot of things to talk about. And you have an old, tired Liberal government. And quite truthfully, the statement that the Prime Minister is out of touch and Canadians are out of money is resonating. An election, I believe, is imminent simply because it doesn't matter what they do, they can't stop the bleeding. It would be better to go to the polls, even if they lose, and lose 70, 80 seats, but still be a viable party in Parliament, than wait another year and be completely decimated, because things are not going to get better for a while. That, as always, is Pray on This. Hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on notifications, and I will see you real soon.